If I'm depressed, if I'm feeling down, I don't feel motivated, I don't force myself to do the work, right? Oh, I got to get this done today. I got to finish the rundown or I got to do that. No, I'll kick back and I'll watch a good movie that fires me up. And most of the time after I'm done, it's inspired me so much. Then I go and jump and do what I said I didn't want to do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by Crazy Ant Media. Today, we're going to continue to step into this brand new year, of course, of 2025. It's kind of a piggyback off of our past episode, the last time we joined you, and we want to talk about just emotional burnout, what it is and how it differs from physical exhaustion, and what we can do to truly recover. If you ever felt exhausted, even after resting, this episode is definitely for you, and I know I have, so we're going to have a lot to deep dive into. And as always, I'm joined by my father-in-law and co-host, Dustin. How are you doing today?
I'm full of energy. I'm not exhausted. No, I'm kidding. Anybody who knows me knows I don't sleep very well. I don't sleep very much, and this is a great episode to dive into because I want to dig deeper into. Am I physically exhausted? Am I emotionally burnt out? Am I both? This is going to be a fun one. I think I'm both. But we're going to figure it out. We're going to dive into this one, and I think it's going to be a good conversation. I'm so glad that this kind of came up in our last episode, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that'll be a fun one to dive into because we all know I got issues, and yeah, you too. So this is going to be fun.
Yay, let's celebrate having issues. Oh my goodness. But yeah, the difference between like emotional and physical, like I feel like emotional burnout rather than physical burnout is different due to the fact that even after physical burnout, I still feel like I can move around and get some stuff done. It may be at a slower pace, but I definitely feel like I'm able to still accomplish things throughout the day. But emotional burnout, like I literally feel stuck. I feel like I can't move. I feel like I can't talk.
Yes.
And I feel like I can't be productive in any way. Like with physicality, yeah, I still feel like I could be productive because even after, you go out and do something and it's draining to you, I feel like I can come home and before I sit down, I can still accomplish a few things throughout the house, throughout the office, whatever. But if it's emotional, like I feel like dead, empty, like cannot move forward. It's such a weird thing because like you do feel attached, you are disattached, you feel the lack of motivation, you feel, like no one cares, and you feel like why should I even care? So it's weird because emotional burnout and exhaustion is a very fine line and leads to a depressional state. And so we always want to try to avoid that. So that's why we're sitting here having this conversation.
Without doubt. And that is definitely how I can tell the difference because I don't sleep a lot. I average about 4 hours a night, and I've been that way for the majority of my life since like 19 or 20 years old. And we won't discuss how old I am, but it's been a long time. And so when I'm physically exhausted, I can get up, I can go, I can do what I have to do. But there are times where I'm just like, I'm not getting out of bed today. I have no motivation to do anything at all. And that is when I realize, and when it's emotional. It's mental. It's in your head. You're burnt out there as opposed to the body. Because hell, we've made cross country trips with no sleep. We've done, we've worked on film sets where we're doing 12, 13, 14-hour days and then getting right up with after a couple hours of sleep doing it again. Are we physically exhausted? Of course we are. But there's no emotional burnout there, which is why we're motivated to just hop right back up and do another 16-hour day. But you're right. When you're emotionally burnt out, you just can't find that motivation to want to do anything. You just I think detachment was a great word. You are just, I don't want to be a part of anything right now. And that is dangerous. And so how do you get there? Right? And I think this seems to be a theme throughout almost every episode that we have when we're talking about mental health. And I think it's stress. Stress is, in my opinion, the key factor of all bad things mental health wise. It's when you get in trouble is stress. And that could be self-inflicted stress. That could be stress put upon you by a negative situation that wasn't intended, but there it is. I really do think chronic stress is the cause of most emotional burnout and most mental health problems. And that could be anything. You know, you and I were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. Overcommitting to things when we know we don't have the capacity to do it, right? Caregiving, people pleasing. When you're so involved in trying to make sure everyone else is happy, you don't realize that you're stressed out and making yourself unhappy. That will burn you out real quick. Because by the end of the day, when you're trying to focus on self-care, you don't have any energy. You are literally wiped out emotionally from trying to make sure everybody else is happy. And that is not good. And then the other situation, and you touch on this all the time, it's when you've got either work, school, a relationship, whatever the case may be, outside situations that are playing into your stress level. Yeah, and unfortunately, guys, we all have them. We all have to work, right? That's just an evil necessity of the world, right? We all want to be in a relationship. We all want to be happy. We want to have that loved one that we want to spend our time with, and everything. And so those are just things part of life, but they can be stressful sometimes. And I think that you have to acknowledge the fact that even the good thing, because I don't want to focus and say everything that causes emotional burnout is bad. That's not necessarily true. You can have some really good things in your life that are causing emotional burnout just because you're stressed about keeping them good. And that can be an issue, right? It's like, wow, everything is perfect here. Let's not fuck this up. Oh shit, now I'm stressed about not fucking this up, and it's a good thing. So it's not all bad, but it certainly can get you in trouble if you start stressing about how good or not good something is, right?
Most definitely. And I also feel like feeling like there's space for you. Like I know in my relationship, my wife is very open to talking all about her feelings, what's going on, what irritates her, anything like that. And she talks a lot because she is the mouth's daughter. So it's one of those things where sometimes I do feel like there's not enough space for me because I already have problems articulating things and articulating my emotions to try to physically make them come out of my mouth. And that's like one of the hardest things to physically make things like me speak about these situations. So sometimes I feel like there's not enough space because it's being taken up by someone who is very comfortable talking about that. And that's not her fault. That's not your fault. That's nobody else's fault. That's just me feeling that way internally to where I physically feel like I can't do that. But I was also feeling that way prior to meeting y'all. So I mean, it's hard because you do want to be there for people. You do want to be a part of as many things as possible. So you do unintentionally overcommit even when you still need to dedicate time to yourself, and it's okay to have like little segments, little pockets throughout your day to have brain rotting time to just not do anything, but don't make that your entire day. But to try to feel like there is enough space, I feel like sometimes can be overwhelming and daunting, and just trying to navigate each other's lives while trying to put yourself first. It is a lot because once you step into a relationship, whether that be professional or personal, like you have to realize that you are giving a good amount of yourself to the other person or to the
Right.
project or to the company. So you have to figure out how to navigate all of that and how to be as comfortable as you can be and speak up when you need to, because I think that's part of my problem too. I have a hard time because I like to be a part of everything I can, but I have a hard time speaking up and saying I can't do something, or I have a lot going on, or things like that. So I always try to avoid it, but it's important to completely give your entire self to yourself.
Hmm.
Let you be in control of your life instead of letting other people or let other situations dictate how you are trying to go through your life. Because once you do that, you do go through burnout and realize you're not giving your all to whatever you want to give your all to.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes, recognizing that your communication skills are different is
Mm-hmm.
key, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of arguments amongst people sometimes because they're not acknowledging that they communicate in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And you have to find that mix that's like I overshare and I don't like to share enough, and that causes arguments unless you can recognize the other one's ability and go, how do we make this work in the middle somewhere, right? And I think so recognizing those type things is definitely key. Um, and we asked this at the top of the show. It's like, I, why if I'm having a really bad day, I'm exhausted, I'm not feeling great, I'm just drained, I sleep 13 hours. Why do I wake up still feeling bad? Why do I
Mm-hmm.
still feel kind of drained, right? Well, the difference is why sleep isn't enough is because if you're emotionally burnt out, when you lay your head down and you go to sleep in an emotionally bad state, you tend to carry that through your sleep. You dream, or you can't sleep because your mind is racing about those negative thoughts. When you're carrying that emotional burnout, that mental fatigue, sleep ain't gonna help because you're not expelling that from the brain. You're not getting rid of that. So while the body is recovering, the mind is not. So the body might be able to hop up and do what it's got to do, but the mind spent all night still burnt out, still thinking about these things. That's why rest isn't always the key to making yourself feel better when you're having a bad day. That's why it's so critically important to understand the difference between when you're physically exhausted and when you're mentally exhausted. Now, we're not saying that you can't be both sometimes. You absolutely can be both sometimes. As in not being able to sleep because your mind is racing and you're stressed out. That would also cause physical exhaustion. But it is critical to be able to recognize the difference and understand that just taking a nap, a power nap, or trying to sleep, the full 8 hours or whatever, that's not necessarily going to be the solution to your problem. And as we talk about all the time, sometimes you can't fix everything. Some things aren't fixable. There's ways to adapt, there's ways to overcome, but doesn't necessarily mean it's a fixable problem that you're not going to deal with again at some point. One thing though that I think really does help, and you mentioned this with you, is podcasts and things like. If you're feeling like you're getting a bit emotionally drained, you're not motivated, you can't find a reason to get up that morning, you're just not wanting to talk to anybody or whatever, intentionally set yourself up to do something that brings you joy, that gets you fired up. If listening to a good podcast gets you in a good mood, if watching a great movie fires you up or inspires you, or just even if it's getting up and cooking yourself some eggs, if you enjoy cooking, or so, get into the habit of when you feel like you're getting emotionally burnt out, you're just not motivated, you can't find the reasoning to want to do something, then intentionally put yourself in to something that you enjoy doing, because that's the first key, I think, of breaking out of that cycle, is actually forcing yourself to do something you will enjoy, right? I don't want to use force. Force is maybe the wrong terminology, but doing something that you will enjoy to try to break out of the negative, to the detachment from things. I think that's critically key. I just, I know I do. If I'm depressed, if I'm feeling down, I don't feel motivated, I don't force myself to do the work, right? Ugh, I got to get this done today. I got to finish the rundown, or I got to do that. No, I'll kick back and I'll watch a good movie that fires me up. And most of the time after I'm done, it's inspired me so much. Then I go and jump and do what I said I didn't want to do. And so sometimes it's as simple as that, guys. Just doing stuff that you know makes you happy is key to sometimes avoiding the emotional burnout.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, we both have been having a lot going on recently. So, I mean, trying to put myself in the situation where I'm thinking about when was the last time I actually felt rested. It was when I took everything off the plate, I mean, or at least two of the three major things that I have going on. But the bad part is like I enjoy all three things. I enjoy everything that I have on my plate, but when you're doing them at such a consistent basis, that's when it gets so overwhelming and so taxing on the mental health. Because, I mean, while trying to study for a test here, I also have another test there, and then trying to still continue to produce content and put out content and find more people to bring into the company. And all of the different things. So it's very, very freaking interesting. I mean, when was the last time you felt like you were completely rested?
So, well, you know this, and I do this. I try to do it twice a year, but I definitely do it once a year. The last time I felt rejuvenated and completely fully rested is Christmas, when I
Hmm.
took the time. So what I try to do, guys, and I think this is, if you guys want to try this, I think, and you did this, I know, quite a while ago, the honeymoon, but it's just go off grid. Put the
Mm-hmm.
phone down, turn everything off. Televisions, phones, they're just completely off grid, and just take time to relax, enjoy nature, read a book, something to where there is nothing going on around you that can cause stress. You would be amazed at how refreshed you feel when you're not worried about anything but yourself. Or you can go off grid with someone, but just the key aspect of is disconnecting from. This is when you want to be detached, right? Because not feeling detached, but actually detached, and that will rejuvenate you in ways that I can't even explain. I never did that. I never even thought about doing that. It was a friend of mine who would consistently do that, and I'm like, maybe I should try that. Maybe I should just put stuff away and not have anybody, mess with me, or not talk to anybody, or not intentionally. There's a difference, right? You're not avoiding people. You're just intentionally taking some time off. Give them a warning. Don't freak them out. Don't
Right.
just turn off the phone and don't talk to anybody for a
Don't
week. Everybody
disappear.
will think you're like, give them the warning that you're going off grid. But I think that it's key. And so the answer to your question is, yeah, when I went off grid for the holidays, it was just, I slept in as long as I wanted to sleep in. I was cooking, I was having conversations, I was doing everything I wanted to do and not worried about anything else. And I think that's so key to I mean, being physically and emotionally pumped up with energy and not exhausted. I think that's just, and I guess that you could call that prioritizing mental downtime. Because let's be honest about it, guys. We live here now. And you're not getting any downtime. This is anxiety in a hand. This builds anxious stress 24/7. So you got to be able to put that down for a little bit and go, woo, need to step away from that, or whatever. I do think that the cell phone culture and social media and the 20-second attention span, the TikTok flow, and it plays a huge part into emotional burnout, as far as I'm concerned, because you do find yourself, like you were talking about a couple weeks ago, just there, brain rotting, and then you're looking at plane crashes and political shit, and your mind is just filling with stress to where you just don't want to do anything. So that's key for me. It's going off grid and prioritizing that mental downtime to just take a break. I think that's key, and it physically refreshes you. It really does. It's not just a mental, but it's a physical refresh as well.
Most definitely. And I mean, we tried to choreograph a couple different, habits and practices that you can do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to
Yeah.
try to navigate how to try to change your burnout or avoid it or get past anything that you're trying to get past. And for your daily habits, setting boundaries at work and in relationships, no matter what you're going through on a daily basis. Again, check in with yourself every single day to see where you're at and what you can sustain throughout that particular day. Try to do something small for yourself every single day. And then, of course, we've talked about it, prioritizing mental health downtime
Yep.
and then practicing mindfulness because, you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. But like you said, if you go off of grid, be mindful of making sure other people know what you're doing so that they
Yes.
don't worry about you and just show up out of nowhere while you're trying to, you know, center yourself, basically. And I know you put together some weekly practices as
I
well.
did, and this one is going to sound funny because we were just talking about how the political stuff causes anguish and stress. But anybody who knows me for a really long time, I'm a political junkie. I love politics, so it just does the opposite for me. So one of the things that I say you should try to do weekly is actually schedule time for activities that you find enjoyable. And I do that. I have scheduled hiking times that I try to do. I schedule times where I know I'm going to go check out this movie or whatever. But one of the things that I always have scheduled is no matter what I'm doing, there's a particular time where I will sit down and I will watch Inside Politics. And it brings me joy. It's just one of those things where I can watch and be engaged and go, oh, look at this shit going on. And it fires me up. So, and I'm not saying, because I understand that brings a lot of stress to some people, but whatever you find enjoyable. If it's drawing, if it's watching a show, if it's going out for a hike, make sure you're scheduling time every week to do that so that you don't find yourself wrapped up in and missing out on that, right? Because that leads to the burnout. The other thing is, we talk about this, I feel like, on every show, but it's so amazing. Journaling and engaging in therapy. And sometimes journaling is therapy, especially if you do what we had talked about a couple weeks ago and what I've been doing for a long time is going back and reading your own journals from like years ago. And wow, does it really open your eyes about how far you've come, right? If you want a daily affirmation or think about how successful you've been in life, go back and look at what you've been writing and then go, holy wow, I'm awesome right now compared to me 4 years ago. So, journaling and therapy. We say this all the time too. Whether your therapy is talking it out with friends, or your pastor, or listening to our show or a show similar to this, or actually seeing a therapist, that's a great thing. That is a great thing that will help avoid emotional burnout. Sometimes getting rid of stress is as easy as just getting it all out to somebody that'll listen. I've had therapy sessions to where my therapist never said a word. Hello, how you doing today? Goodbye, I'll see you next session. And I just spewed like the whole time. Because sometimes that's as simple as that, right? Just getting it out and having somebody hear you and see you. That can alleviate so much stress.
Completely agree. And I mean, some monthly practices as well would be evaluating stress levels and adjusting commitments,
Yep.
trying to figure out what is good for you, what is not good for you. And then, of course, making space for self care retreats or personal days. If you can, if your schedule allows it, find days throughout the month to just completely do whatever you want to do,
Yes.
like no matter what anyone else says. I think that is very important because you have to make yourself happy. Things will happen around you that make you happy, but that's not going to happen 24/7. So you are going to be with you 24/7. You are bound to the hip to yourself. So make sure you are happy. And I think that is it's detrimental. It really is because you go throughout life trying to be the best person you can be, or at least I would hope you would, and trying to take care of your family, your kids, your partner, everybody who is around you that you know and love. But you spend so much time doing that that you forget about yourself. Well, you need to dedicate time to yourself because if you can't be fully happy with yourself, then you're not completely letting yourself be happy in those situations. And that's going to show your kids, your spouse, anybody who is around you that sees you on a consistent basis, they're going to see that something's off. So you
Yeah.
have to make sure that you take time to actually make yourself happy. I think that is very freaking important. I mean, a key takeaway from all of this is recovery from burnout isn't about doing more, it's about what you're doing and what truly restores you to who you actually are. Yeah, it's very important.
It's hugely important. And, this whole episode is about emotional burnout. But emotional burnout most definitely leads to physical exhaustion. And, guys, physical exhaustion can lead to major health problems. So
Yeah.
it is all related, it is all like together. So avoiding emotional burnout and alleviating stress can go a long way in physically keeping you healthy as well. And that's just so key, so key. I know we got some emails on this too, because we stick out. So you want to take this first one? Funny. Was this
For
you?
sure,
No.
for sure. From James,
There you
he
go.
is from Texas and he is a 40-year-old man, obviously. And we're going to be talking about burnout and feeling stuck. He writes, "Hey guys, I think I'm living in a literal emotional burnout.
Mm.
I used to believe that getting a good night's sleep was all I needed to recharge, but lately no amount of rest seems to help. Work, stress, family, responsibilities, and just the pressure of always having to be on has left me feeling emotionally drained. How do you know when it's time to take a break and really step back versus just pushing through? I'm afraid that slowing down will make me fall behind, but I also know that I can't keep going like this. I would love to hear your thoughts." Personally, for me, you don't know until you know. It's hard to try to navigate and pinpoint an exact moment where you're like, okay, I need to step back. So just trying to, if you go through your schedule and see that you have a lot on your plate, then go through that and start taking things off that can be pushed to the next week or doesn't have to get done right away. I think that prioritize what's most important to just keep your body and keep your household running. I think that is it's key, because if you don't do that and you try to do too much at once, you're losing something. You're losing sense of self, you're losing sleep, you're losing motivation. So if you continue to push through, that is when you will inevitably fall down, stumble, and somebody will have to be there to catch you, or you'll be in the rut for a little bit. So realizing when it's time to step back, it's hard to put a exact pinpoint on it. But honestly, anytime your chest starts to get tight, anytime you start to feel like, okay, it's kind of hard to breathe, it's kind of hard to figure out when to do all this, like, okay, that's when you know you need to start delegating and figuring out what is best for you, how to move forward.
And I really want to say this to you, James. When because one line stuck out to me there. It was like when you said that slowing down will make me feel like I'm falling behind. Multitasking was a word made up. It's a made up
Yeah.
word by corporate America to make people feel more productive. The actual mind is incapable of multitasking. It's not a real thing. That's why if you're doing all these kind of things at once, you're doing a little here and a little there and a little there, because you're not actually able to do all of it at once. And it's been proven, study after study after study, that when you slow down and focus on individual tasks instead of you're actually more productive. So don't let it get into your head that if you slow down a little bit, you're somehow falling behind. I think you'll find that if you take that moment to slow down and just rest and recover and alleviate a little bit of stress, you'll be more productive than you are if you just gun through and keep pushing through and keep going. It's critical. And I think you'll see a huge difference in that, because I think we all fall into the multitasking world and it's just not a real thing. It's made up. It's literally made up. Melissa from Florida, 35, learning to heal from burnout. This one should be interesting. Hi, Logan and Dustin. I'm not sure what I'm experiencing lately. Why ain't that the truth? But I always feel so mentally drained. I thought taking a weekend off or getting extra sleep would help, but I still feel exhausted in ways I can't even explain. It's not just physical. I feel emotionally, and here we go, detached, disconnected. She says emotionally disconnected from things that I used to love. I realize realized that I've been ignoring my own needs for too long, always putting others first. I'm now trying to relearn how to prioritize myself without feeling guilty. What are some small but meaningful ways to start the healing process? I think you answered your own question there. I really do, Melissa. Key, prioritizing yourself. We talk about people pleasing, always bad. Always bad. If that's the cycle that you're in, it's always good. And the fact that you recognize that already and that you have started to prioritize yourself, you've already started the healing. Well done. That's a great way to do it. And I know where you're probably struggling, and we all do this when we first feel like we need to prioritize ourselves because we feel like somebody's going to get mad at me or they're not going to want to be around me because I'm ignoring them, blah, blah. The guilt. Feeling guilty for prioritizing yourself, that you're being selfish, that you're not taking... Well, that's part of the people-pleasing mentality. You're not being selfish. You're not doing anything wrong. And if the people in your circle think that you are because you're now taking care of yourself, well, then they don't need to be in your circle. But I really do think, though, and Logan, I'm curious on your thoughts, but you've kind of answered you've started your healing. Well done. Good for you, Melissa. You're on the right track.
Yeah, most definitely. I think she did. And I mean, just do one thing that completely makes you happy that you can not think about anything else. Like, for example, I've been feeling kind of like the same way you have been for the past month and a half, 2 months. And I think, after this episode and after having these conversations, definitely don't want any screen time, so I'm going to put on a podcast, and it always makes me feel really good to be in a clean space. So I'm going to put on a podcast and clean the house and just have things organized. And it's always the smallest things too that can kind of help you get back on track. It's so funny, like no dishes in the dishwasher or no dishes in the sink, and it's the things that you don't want to do that can sometimes put you back on track, no matter how big or small. So I think you're on the right track. That's for sure.
Without doubt. Without doubt. Okay, so if that didn't help, if maybe those weren't all in, there's other resources for you guys. We can totally help you out. I know if you look behind me, I've got some just amazing books that I read all the time to help me with my process. I know Logan is also on his own journey with those type things, but there are some really great books that deal specifically with this. One of them is actually called The Burnout Cure. I don't know if I like the word cure, but it's a fabulous book by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. Nagoski. Let's go Nagoski. The other one is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Yes, it does. Listen to your body, both here and here, because it will keep score and it will tell you when you're on the wrong path. There's some apps also, right? Headspace, Insight Timer, Noisehill. Those are all really good. And I know you're really good at I love your journal prompts. So come up, throw some out there. What journal prompts do you think would be really good for this one?
Well, some that have been really sticking out to me recently are what activities genuinely recharge me. What things can actually feel like you are getting back on the right track just by taking the small baby steps. And then what boundaries do I need to set to protect my energy? I think that's also very important because it always sucks when you cross that line into about to be burned out and then burned out. So to try to pinpoint when you can not get burnt out is it's such a highly valuable skill. So please be sure to try to gain this skill, because if you do, then you don't have life completely figured out, but you're on the right track. That's for sure. So to try to prioritize yourself and set boundaries to where you don't feel mentally exhausted or burned out. I think that's very important.
Oh, without doubt. And I think that the thing that's really sticking out to me this whole episode, this whole conversation, is the stark difference is alleviate the stress. Because if you're feeling really tired and unmotivated and just not wanting to get out of bed and you have a lot of stress in your life, that is emotional burnout. You are not physical. You might be physically exhausted as well, but that is emotional burnout that is playing into that. So just be aware of what's happening in your life and say, is something causing you stress? Because if there's something in your life that is causing you stress, and a lot of stress, you are likely suffering from emotional burnout. And being able to recognize that and potentially eliminating what's causing you stress will go a long way in that full recovery of what you're trying to do. And then the other thing is, don't let anybody tell you that you don't, because you do deserve true rest and restoration. Take it one step at a time, set those boundaries, do what you got to do, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Because we say this over and over and over again, but there is no weakness in asking for help. Like I said, if you go to a therapist and all you do is spew whatever you got to spew, that's okay. And you shouldn't ever feel ashamed about that, or guilty about that, or we put too much of a stigma on that, and we need to get rid of that. We need to do our part to help alleviate that, because there is no stigma, there is no shame, there is no weakness or guilt or bad feeling by admitting that you need help.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And of course, if this episode resonated with you, please be sure to leave a review and share it with someone who might be struggling with burnout. We're definitely here for any sorts of insights, recaps, anything like that. We are definitely here to help others take that step forward to be the best version of themselves. I mean, it's very important. And then next time on Everything's Okay, we are going to be talking about changes happening around you and how that change may affect you. So
Ooh.
that could dive deep into a lot of different things, man, because we have a lot of different things from our past where things changed, whether that be moving, losing loved ones, or anything like that, that completely changed us for the rest of our lives, and how we became the men we are today because of those changes.
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
that is hard.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think this is going to be interesting because we kicked off the year with talking about new year, but same you, and I think
Hmm.
a lot of this conversation will be, well, what is if it's same you and everyone around you is changing? How does that affect you? Like, well, I'm still me. I'm still doing the same exact thing, but y'all are so different. Well, that will affect you, right? So, yeah, that's going to be a fun conversation. I can't wait to have that one as well.
Oh, for sure, man, for sure. Well, thank you everyone for listening today. We really appreciate all your love and support. Of course, this podcast is dedicated to anyone who has ever had an uphill battle with mental health or is going through a battle with mental health. Sometimes we win and sometimes we lose, but the most important thing is to keep getting back up. And remember, us here at Crazy Ant Media are here for you. So always feel free to reach out if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns. Like I said, reach out to info@crazyantmedia.com. Of course, you can follow us on Instagram, X, Threads at Everything's OKP. And of course, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yes.
And remember that everything's okay.